we are very, very pleased to be having this workshop series in partnership with 8am My Case. It's been an incredible partnership over the last many, many years, as well as with the recent integration we forged just last year. And most importantly, because I don't think there's any more important discussion to be having about how lawyers can leverage innovation and technology to position their firms to thrive financially in this modern era. And I will say right away that we do a lot of CLEs and CLE workshops and presentations. This is not a CLE. This is a business-focused workshop that is going to be informing all of you attorneys that are on this workshop series on exactly how you can leverage technology to position your firm to thrive, because this webinar is also, this workshop is very, very timely. As we all know, AI and technology is very rapidly changing the legal landscape and the legal industry. And what we can say is that it's, we have attorneys that are accessing this technology. We also have, attorneys that are fresh out of law school or just trying to get their practice rolling that are accessing this technology. And then we also have clients that are accessing this technology to help them with their legal process, draft and review their documents, provide them with legal strategy. And so it is a very important time for all of you as practitioners to be very seriously considering how it is that you can start to leverage this same technology to compete and to also build efficiencies and offerings for the market to position yourself and your firms to provide services to a very large audience of folks that need them. And one thing I will share before we really, get off on get into the presentation here, because I want to say this really clearly, is that we believe that the future of law and the practice of law is attorneys that are leveraging legal technology to deliver legal help in a way that delivers services that is both compelling to clients, it is accessible to them, and delivers them the needs, the legal help that they are needing in their various different life events, but also doing it in a way that is very efficient and very profitable. And this is one of the aspects here in terms of why we're so excited about this workshop series, is that we are here to show you exactly how to do this. It's really, really important for all attorneys right now to be doing whatever they can to implement technology, because that is how you're going to be able to differentiate and respond to the changes that we're seeing across the legal landscape. And in partnership with 8am My Case as their team, as well as with all of the learnings that have come from all of our experience working with thousands of attorneys across the country, we are here to show you exactly how to do that in this workshop series. And that has to do with the fair practice model, which we'll talk about today, which is how to leverage legal technology to be able to deliver the services in a highly profitable way. That's really going to be the focus for today. How that is an integral part to accessibility and profitability for attorneys, accessibility for clients, profitability for attorneys. But then also, as we all know, that this series is going to be covering, there's 3 parts to this series. On the next series, we're also going to talk about, well, how do you do that in a consultation? How do you communicate to clients a compelling offer? How do you make sure that what you're leading with is something that they can easily fit into their budget, and that also that you can deliver in a profitable way? What are the tools that make that possible? And then also we're going to be doing a third part in the series, which is how do we apply this model to the very specific practice areas that you may be practicing yourself? And so it's really giving you everything that we can provide in terms of guidance and support and tools and resource and very specific direction, so that you know exactly what you can do right away to leverage technology and to deliver services in this modern landscape and continue to thrive as attorneys, because we really want to do everything we can to support legal professionals like yourself in being able to succeed in this modern era. So with this first presentation, we're going to be focused on the fair practice model and giving you some insight into what that means and how legal technology is a very integral part of doing that, delivering these service options in a way that's very efficient. So as we shared here, we have a couple others that are going to be joining us today in the presentation. Again, I'm Dave Ahrens. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Access Legal. We also have Ms. Jen Johnson, who's the co-director of our education team. She's also the former president of the Mississippi Bar. Welcome, Jen. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
And also we have Mr. James Bogate, who is the co-director of our education team, also head of partnerships here at Access Legal. And then we also have, what's up, James? Well, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, can we add spotlights as well? Yeah, thank you. And then alongside the 8am My Case team is Max Nuttall, who is going to be doing the demonstrations. He is one of the solutions consultants for 8am My Case. So very pleased to have you with us today as well.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, so with that, let's get right into it here. I'd like, James, if you could take us into the market and why it is relevant for, and kind of the market opportunity that we're seeing in the industry for attorneys to be able to deliver accessible legal services in a profitable way.
No problem. Thank you, Dave. It's important to, before we get into the fair practice model and the specifics of it and the, mechanics of how to utilize technology to navigate that and implement it, it's really important to understand the why. Right. Particularly in the legal profession, we are creatures of habit. We are, skeptical by nature. And so anytime there's change that's introduced as an idea, it's really important to understand the reasoning and the logic behind it to be able to fully embrace, the compelling nature of what's happening in our market. So let's take a quick trip down memory lane to understand where we are now. It's always best to take a look back in the past. 50 years ago in the 70s, 99% of people that needed legal representation were able to access it. Right. So from an access to justice perspective, obviously there's a ton of efficiency in the courtroom. People are getting the help they need. From a societal perspective, people are getting the relief that they need and deserve under our rules. And from a business perspective, from a client sourcing, revenue sourcing perspective for our law firms, this was the height of our profession. Fish were jumping in the boat, so to speak. Everyone that's showing up is able to hire us, right? And it's an incredibly profitable time for our business. It's easy to get lulled into a false sense of security that those things just automatically persist, right? So now we take a look at the current legal representation numbers, and we see only 22% of people out there are getting the help they need. Why? Why pay attention to this webinar and give serious consideration to the fair practice model? This is why. We are not helping the amount of people that not only historically have we, but is necessary for our democracy to function properly and people to get the help they need. We've had a 78% decrease in access to legal services. So from an access to justice perspective, the ramifications are incredibly clear, right? You have 78% more pro se litigants floating around on any given day in the courtroom. Motion court is an hour and a half longer than it probably needs to be. You have people not getting the relief they need. And, from a continued access to justice perspective, a lot of our access to justice initiatives are funded by the interest from our IOLTA accounts, right? And so if we're seeing a 78% decrease in client access to services, it's a pretty reasonable leap to say that we're seeing a similar decrease in revenue, a similar decrease in sustained averages in IOLTA accounts when you account for inflation and all of those types of things. We now just have less money flowing through those accounts, which turn into less money flowing to those services for people that are pro se and need representation to be delivered to them and help through the system. From a business perspective, most relevant to us here today, from a business perspective, this is a pool of clients, a pool of business drying up rapidly. And this trend is not turning the other way on its own. Why the fair practice model? Why look to something different than what we've been doing? Because if we don't, a lot of this business is being given away. If you're watching the news, or if you live in Michigan or Arizona or one of those states that are introducing legislation to allow paraprofessionals to practice law, you're experiencing this in a very visceral, concurrent way, contemporaneously, because this pool is starting to dry up even further because lawmakers are saying, hey, people aren't getting the help they need. What are we going to do? It's not fixing itself. Let's give the solution to non-lawyers, right? So you have paraprofessionals that are able to do trials and represent clients. So it erodes our own professional integrity, the value of what we do. So I hope you can take a moment to allow it to resonate what this means to our business. Our job is to help people. And as of today, less than a quarter of the population is able to access services. So what are the factors that are contributing to that? Why? Right? Well, let's take a snapshot at the traditional way of doing business. Our profession has a very consistent, old-timey way of doing things that I would argue everyone in this room has just been kind of mentored and indoctrinated into. And that business model relies on large upfront sums of money, right? So the typical retainers anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000. And then either, there are refill provisions where we're saying, hey, when it's down to 20%, you have to refill that retainer automatically. That's $4,000 to $8,000 in perpetuity whenever somebody's balance gets down. Or even if you don't have refill provisions, most people are saying, okay, hey, when I've worked a lot and billed against your time and your retainer's gone, I'll just invoice you. Well, what's that look like in the real world? That's usually a $2,000, $2,500 invoice that we hand to a client and say, okay, I need you to pay that in 30 days or else we have to withdraw from your case, right? And so the reason this model no longer works, the reason why we can't just sit on our hands as a profession and say, hey, the way I've been doing it has been fine, is if you look at income demographics today. So think about what this model's asking for: large upfront sums of money over and over again. 22% of people are getting the help they need. Remember that number. 20% of the population are high income earners, right? 20% of the population, of course, they can afford our services. Of course, it doesn't matter how we structure them. They make they make over $15,000 a month in income, but they have between $4,000 and $40,000 on average cash on hand. So they are easily able to afford refill provisions and pay large invoices. The rest of the population, 80% of the population, cannot do that. And the challenge here, or the opportunity here, the reason why we phrase this as a market opportunity, is that yes, those access to justice numbers, they're devastating. They are an indictment on us as a profession. And I'm sure a lot of you are sitting there kind of shocked because you may not have noticed. Think about it. If you still have people that are able to pay $5,000, $10,000 as a retainer, the alarm bells aren't going off that, oh man, I'm actually only attracting these 20%, these 20 percenters, right? I'm only actually advertising and making myself accessible to these 20 percenters. You wouldn't even notice, really. But whenever you kind of branch out into a growth phase of your firm and you want to market and you want to attract more clients, you start realizing the way we structure our services is preclusive. It's not that people don't have money, they do, right? These income demographics come straight from the Pew Research Institute. They don't lie, right? Half of the population, 171 million people, have between $5,000 and $15,000 a month in income. They drive nice cars. Their kids go to private school. They live in $300,000 plus homes. But the challenge is that modern income, economics mean they only have between $1,000 to $4,000 cash on hand. So if we're an estate planning attorney saying, hey, it's $6,000 for your estate and trust, please let me know when you have it. See you then. You're never going to see that population. 80% of the population goes without estate plans their whole lives, right? If you're a family law attorney and you're saying $5,000 to $10,000 and you have an accountant and a teacher come in, those two people, despite having great income and very stable professions, can't access our profession. So from a business perspective, this isn't just an access to justice issue. This is an access to revenue issue. The money is out there. The clients have it. they're dying to access our services. If we're just willing to shift the way we collect our money and the way we offer those services, we can actually double, triple, 5x our revenue and clients. And as a very nice added benefit, we can start to reverse that access to justice trend. And everyone in this room, our generation of attorneys, can be the ones that actively made a choice and a decision to change this trend. And again, boost our business and find another way to grow our businesses. So the way that we have, viewed this opportunity is straight through the eyes of economics. If we can access that 171 million people, if we can get help to the 50% of middle income earners out there, you're looking at over $1 trillion market opportunity in the legal industry. And I know that number is so incomprehensibly huge, but it's so incomprehensibly huge, it means wherever you are, you should just be able to dip a cup into the river of clients that need help and pull an extra 5, 10, 20 clients out of there for your firm every month. And we're not talking about discounting services ever. That is not what the fair practice model is. You will not hear us talk about that. It's just about acknowledging the reality of the income demographics and structuring services in a way that allow people to access your services, allow you to collect on those fees, and allow you to grow your business by sometimes 4 to 5 times your current revenue. We do this at Access Legal, as Dave had mentioned, through the FAIR practice model. FAIR is an acronym. It stands for Financially Accessible Innovative Representation. This isn't something that we, kicked around in a room for a couple days and then brought out to the public to try to sell something new. This is something that has been built over the last 20 years. We have 4,000 plus law firms and attorneys that have run this model in the past. The results do not lie. It's something that we track very closely. We've helped over 2 million clients. Our attorneys have gone 4 to 5x on their revenue and in their growth. We've sourced over $1 billion in revenue for our network. This is something that is tried and true. And Dave, being in this meeting, I always like to point out, as a visionary leader, he knew from the very beginning that the most compelling thing to lawyers was to hear from other lawyers. And this model is built off of the aggregate success of all of the lawyers that have worked with us. Anytime somebody comes back and says, hey, I'm running this, I'm doing this, we're making 6 figures a month. Mr. Aarons flies to their city, puts a microphone in their face and says, tell the rest of the network what you're doing to get these results. Take 20 years of him doing that, and it's given us this model and this blueprint for success that we just repackage and deliver here to you today and in CLEs and everywhere, because it's really just a small shift in the way we're doing business that leads to enormous results from a growth perspective, access to justice perspective. It's truly transformative when you blend a new way of looking at offering, legal services with the legal technology available. So to dive more into the details of the fair practice model is going to be Jen Johnson, but I just want to hover on this one thing. I was talking about tangible results, right? What we have seen, if you compartmentalize attorneys' experiences with us to 20 potential client leads, right? What we have seen over and over again is that offering the traditional model with a $5,000 retainer, typically we see a 1 in 20 conversion rate for about a $5,000 average client value across most civil type areas. When running the fair practice model, like I said, we compile these metrics pretty religiously. We see a 1 in 4 conversion rate, right? Even at a 90% collection rate, there's always some business waste, but we see a 90% collection rate with these methods. You're looking at 5 new clients, and at 90% of $5,000 average case value, that's 22,500 compared to 5,000, right? You're looking at 5 new clients instead of 1. So the result is a 4 to 5x in revenue for access to justice attorneys for people running the fair practice model. So We want to take this webinar series to really dive into how to get to those results, right? Because it's not just as simple as saying, oh, I want to work with you guys and send me those potential clients. There is a systematic approach to this that, again, my colleague Jen will dive into more deeply.
All right, thanks, James. So what we do here at Access Legal is we educate. We educate attorneys on how to implement the FAIR practice model. FAIR, again, stands for financially accessible, innovative representation. And anytime we speak to lawyers about innovation, there is always some question about whether it's allowed under our rules, because as James has mentioned a moment ago, we're traditionalists. We do things as we're taught and we follow our mentors. So sometimes we have questions about whether using legal technology is actually ethical, or collecting a fee in a certain way, whether that's ethical. So we have taken a look at the rules of professional conduct using the model rules from ABA and have found that, in fact, there are several rules that do apply to the FAIR practice model, and the FAIR practice model fits squarely within our legal and ethical obligations as attorneys. So the ones that my favorite rules are the ones that define and talk about the attorney-client relationship. And so that's going to be your rule 1.1, 1.3, and 1.4 in particular, speaking about being competent and diligent and also having really good communication with your clients. So we're talking about retainer agreements and making sure that we're communicating well. So as we are talking through the model today and over the course of this series, we're going to be touching on all of these different ethical considerations as well. One of the most important ones is Rule 1.2, which allows limited scope representation. And limited scope is allowed in every jurisdiction so long as it's reasonable under the circumstances and the client gives informed consent. So as we are talking about the service options under the FAIR practice model, you'll find that Rule 1.2 is going to be relevant. Obviously, we're talking about fees and dealing with clients' money. So we need to keep in mind Rule 1.5, which basically says fees must be reasonable for your jurisdiction. And it also allows flat fees. And then we need to talk about safekeeping property, because we will be handling clients' money just like we do in any other type of business model or fee structure that we would talk about. So all of this is to say that what we're offering to you today with the FAIR practice model is something that not only we can do, but it's something we should be doing to really do something about this access to justice issue, and also to make sure that we are running viable, sustainable law practices. So that's what this is going to be about today. So let's dive into the detail of the FAIR practice model, and we're going to start with the first two letters. FA stands for financially accessible. And for us to offer financially accessible services, we have two service models that we talk about. That's full representation on automated recurring payments and limited scope representation, either phase by phase of the litigation with the limited appearance or discrete tasks like coaching or writing a letter or making phone calls, discrete tasks where you're not making an appearance in court. All right, so full representation with an automated recurring payment. This is when a client comes to you and has a legal issue. Maybe they've just been served with a divorce. And so they need full representation. They need a lawyer to represent them from the very beginning all the way to the conclusion of the case. To offer a financially accessible full representation, what we do is recommend a reduced access point, lowering the access point so that instead of asking for $5,000 to $10,000, we're asking for an amount of money that fits squarely within the $1,000 to $4,000 cash on hand that 50% of the population may have. So we're looking at offering for full rep about $1,500 to $2,500 to get started as an initial deposit, which gives the clients an opportunity to access your representation. Along with that lower access point, and this is very important, these two things go hand in hand, you want to go ahead and establish an automated recurring payment for the client. Automated recurring payments are something that have come into existence in the last decade. So we didn't have the technology to make sure that we could automate payments. And I know that when you all are hearing me say automated recurring payments, you're thinking, oh, that's a tricky way to say payment plan. And I've done payment plans, and payment plans don't work. The reason payment plans or automated recurring payments do work is because of the automation, because of the new technology that we have. And you're going to be seeing a demonstration of that here in just a moment from 8 a.m. My case to show you how we can schedule these automated recurring payments. But the way you establish what those payments are, how much they're going to be, and when you're taking those payments is crucial. Because typically we would do a payment plan, maybe once a month, there would be a payment of, $600 or $700 or $800 a month. And the clients would inevitably, not be able to make those payments. We had arbitrary dates as to when we were asking the clients to come in to pay. We required the clients to click on a link to make their payment or to come in to pay an invoice. With automated recurring payments, you're able to set it so that there is an automatic withdrawal from either a bank account or a charge on a credit card, so that those payments are made automatically without the client having to do anything to make the payment. It's set it and forget it. And then what's important about learning how to schedule these is you want to keep the timeline of the case in mind. So you've got your initial deposit, then whatever is left over for what your estimated fee is going to be, then you're going to say, how long is this case going to take? In Mississippi, if you have a divorce without kids, it could take anywhere from 9 to 12 months. So in my mind, I know that this is the timeline of the case. So you want to make sure that you're being paid prior to the conclusion of the matter or before you have to go to trial with the matter. And you're going to set those payments on equal intervals based on when the client gets paid, because the easiest time to pay a bill is when there's money in the bank. So what we want to do is schedule those payments on or around their payday. So if they're paid biweekly, the attorney is being paid biweekly. You're able to set a smaller amount and charge it at a higher frequency. So instead of $600 once a month, you're going to be getting $250 to $300 twice a month. It just makes it a whole lot easier for people to pay your fee in that way. It's incredibly important that you have an honest conversation, an open conversation with the clients about this to determine what they can afford. What does their budget allow? So this is not necessarily a quote for a fee. It's a conversation about how the client can access you and pay your legal fees. And as James mentioned earlier, with this modern technology, that it enables a 90% collection rate. So there's very little risk in doing an automated recurring payment plan in this way. And so Dave, I'm going to turn it back over to you now so you can introduce the next demonstration.
Yep. Well, the last thing that Jen just said there is extremely important, right? After testing this for 2 million clients with 4,000 attorneys plus all across the country, this is the collection rate. And the primary reason for, I think, most of you or most attorneys not offering a lower access point like $1,500, $2,500, and instead asking for $5,000 to $10,000 is, well, if I don't get the money now or get it up front, I'm not going to get paid. And traditionally, that was probably the case, for many, 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 many years before this technology was made available. At 8 a.m., my case also, as part of their family of products, has 8 a.m. Law Pay. 8 a.m. Law Pay was one of the pioneers of recurring billing payments, back in 2016 with Amy Porter and her husband deploying this technology, the scheduled payments feature, which, Max is going to be sharing with us in a minute. And then once our attorneys learned about this tool and started implementing it, they found that by structuring payments in the way that Jen described and letting it be, time when people are getting paid and higher frequency, lower and smaller amounts, higher frequency, it led to a much, much higher collection rate, 90+%. And so what that tells us, what the data is informing us is, if we lower that access point and use this technology to deliver payment, offer full representation on automated recurring payments, that you can absolutely have confidence that you are going to get paid 90+% of the balance of the total cost of the case, just as you would in the traditional form. And at the same time, by lowering the access point, we're retaining so many more clients. So that's one of the things as well from a technology and partnership standpoint, why we're so excited about working alongside ADMI case and with the tools that they have available, because it's what enables the possibility for attorneys like yourself to lower the access point and provide accessible services that are also being delivered in a very profitable way. So Max, maybe you want to give us a demonstration of how automated scheduled payments can be set up in ADMI case.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dave. Give me 1 second to start sharing my screen here. Before jumping in, the $1 million Zoom question, can you all see my screen okay here?
I'll stop mine here. Let's see. There we go.
Awesome. So within the MyCase dashboard and really anywhere within the MyCase platform, in order to start setting up the scheduled payments, it's as easy as navigating up top to the little plus icon here. I commonly refer to this as the fanny pack in MyCase, just because it has all the important things. Any page that you go onto, and under the scheduled payments button here, this is like Dave alluded to. This is where LawPay's payment processing is essentially built into MyCase. If you are working with an entirely new client, you'd be able to add their initial information in here. But for this example, let's say one of my more favorite clients, I like working with Lewis here, have the ability of selecting whether this is something that you'd be taking directly into IOLTA or even your operating account, setting that specific amount that you've agreed upon with the client. And here, depending on really what frequency is going to be the most helpful for them, if it's twice a month, monthly, based on that pay date as well. So let's say the 16th would be where they end up getting paid, and be able to change it here as well. In addition to things like the duration, if you want to turn it off yourself, if you have a set number of payments already in mind, a certain end date, depending on the actual lifetime of that specific case, or if there maybe is a specific flat fee of your services that you'd want to reach, this can all be fully customized and again, based on the conversation with that client. Now, from here forward, we would just add the client's credit card information. And you could think of this almost as a monthly, but bi-monthly, whatever the cadence is, almost as like a subscription, similar to how clients are paying for maybe things like Netflix, things of that nature, as well as the ability to pay by e-check as well. So once that has all been entered, this is now something that the firm or really anyone would be able to access under the payments tab under the scheduled payment. So this is where you'd actually be able to review and go back in and look at all of these that are currently set up within the system, go into individual clients. If you ever wanted to make edits or delete these from here, and also directly add new schedules directly within the MyCase platform as well there. So the idea here is you're not spending time out of your day having to follow up with clients, making sure these get paid, and really utilizing things like automations for your staff and also for optimizing the client experience there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Max. And that also can be sent out as a payment link too. So either you can manually process those payments yourself, or you can also send out a simple link that they can click and then make those payments as well. Thanks for that demo, Max. That was very, very simple to use. So thank you. And then let me get back to the screen share here. Okay, so that was an example of how the automated scheduled payments enables full representation on automated recurring payments, an essential component. We can't lower the access point unless we also have automated recurring payments, because just doing payment plans without automated recurring payments will not have the same collection rate. And so this technology has enabled an entirely new service model, a new ability for attorneys to lower access points and provide legal services to these middle-income families without having to charge as much money up front, because they have the technology that underpins ensuring that the payments are drafted in a way that average folks can't afford, average working families. Then that's what ultimately leads to the high collection rates and the higher retention rate in the consultations. So that's the first option. And then Mrs. Johnson, maybe you can lead us through the second aspect of the fair practice model, limited scope.
Yes, so this is the second part of the financially accessible portion of the model. We're going to talk about limited scope services. We have actually two types of limited scope: a phase by phase with limited appearance, and discrete tasks such as coaching or document drafting and review. For each of these, we're going to be offering less than full representation for those clients who just simply can't afford $1,500 to $2,500 down or $300 every 2 weeks, for their full rep on an automated recurring payment. So this is a drop down offer. So with phase by phase, we can move to the next one, which actually is discrete tasks. Okay, so for discrete tasks, what we're talking about is usually flat fee, or if you're offering some kind of coaching or just document preparation, you can actually, bill for that hourly. But in every case with discrete tasks, the client is going to continue to self-represent, so the attorney will not be making an appearance. But these discrete tasks give an opportunity for us to do something, because we believe here at Access Legal that some help is better than no help at all. So if they cannot afford the full rep or can't even afford a phase by phase representation, then these discrete tasks can help them be prepared for whatever court appearance they do have to have. And I know all the judges that I deal with, really appreciate when a client can come in a little bit more prepared, because it helps the whole process go a little bit more smoothly. So the next one is going to be a phase by phase representation. And this is where you may actually make a limited appearance in court. You'll be giving some legal advice, maybe preparing documents, and then making a limited appearance with a notice of limited appearance to the court to inform them and counsel opposite that you're only engaged for this matter through a particular phase of the litigation. Family law has really simple phases for us to talk about. So if you have somebody who needs representation through their temporary orders phase, that's very easily carved out of the entire representation. And you can create a limited scope representation agreement that sets that forth very specifically. You can charge a flat fee for this. Mostly it's between $1,500 and $2,500 for this limited appearance. And then once that phase is over with, you and the client have an opportunity to consider, do we wish to continue with this type of representation? And what we find is that most people who retain an attorney for a phase of litigation usually continue to retain on additional phases and end up with a full representation, but just in a payment plan, that makes sense to them, or a payment fee model that makes sense to them. All of this requires that we have really good, open, honest conversations with our clients so they know what to expect. This fee only pertains to this portion of the case. We can talk about the next portion for an additional fee later. And we find that this is a really good way to help people get the help that they need without having to take on the full representation cost.
Great. Thank you, Jen.
Yes.
And so now let's talk a little bit about, if you're going to be offering limited scope services, a lot of folks might say, well, that, $1,500, that's kind of a low value case. I mean, there's a lot of folks that would like to be able to, work with an attorney on that kind of a financial basis. But, what is the value to the firm, right? Well, with technology, when we start to add that as a layer to be able to deliver this as a service, I was actually just talking to a firm, a large firm in Denver that is looking at, well, how can we compete and provide something that's very compelling to clients to have them hire our services? And as Jen was just sharing, what we found is over 3/4 of the clients you deliver one service to will then hire for additional services from there. So it's a great way to actually, as an enrollment strategy, to offer this as a drop down to get people started if they can't necessarily commit to full representation right away, or financially it doesn't make sense for them right now. And so when we deliver this as a service, okay, let's say it's flat fee, $1,500. Almost all of our access attorneys do these limited scope services as a flat fee. And then we look at the actual time that's involved with getting that done. Traditionally, maybe it takes you an hour to enroll the client, and then you have to do all the intake, manually fill out all the intake forms. And then maybe it takes a couple of hours to then transfer all of that information from the client and kind of fill it into the legal documents or petition or whatever it is that you're preparing for that client. And then you have the court appearance, right? So maybe it takes you 5 hours to get that limited scope service, that enroll the client, prepare it, file it, and then appear for them in court, right? And so we call it the effective hourly rate of that is $300 per hour. But now let's run the exact same, sample service when we have technology like 8 a.m. my case at our fingertips, which is just powered by online intake and document automation, right? So now instead, where you have the client, where you're filling out the intake forms yourself with the client, you can actually send them a link and the client can complete the intake form themselves. So now when I do the enrollment, I talk to the client, do the consultation, get them signed on. Then you send them an online intake form. They fill out that intake form themselves. Now I don't have to spend half an hour to do that, right? And then that intake form auto populates directly into the petition or forms or documents preparing for that client. And now at that point, as soon as they've completed their intake, 80% of the drafting that's needing to be done for that next petition, and also almost any future petition or document you do for the lifetime of that client, is already completed. So now instead of it taking 2 hours to draft a petition, maybe it only takes you about a half an hour, which is pretty typical for most attorneys in our network. And then you have to go do that 2 hour court appearance. And so now the total time for that $1,500 matter that you might be offering as an initial service to clients to get started is only 3 hours. And so what's the effective hourly rate? Well, $1,500, divided by 3, that's $500 an hour. And so now attorneys can deliver the services to clients in a way that, that meets their needs, meets their budget, gets them some help rather than no help at all. But then also strategically, by leveraging technology, that can be one of the most profitable services that you offer in your firm in terms of the return for your time. And also it can be a strategy in terms of being able to offer that to client as a starting place to begin the working relationship with that client, right? A much more compelling, lower cost way to get started, because we all know that relationship most of the time is going to evolve into additional services from there. It's kind of a gateway to the relationship. So then, when we take a look at how 8 a.m. my case and their online intake and document automation can enable that efficiency in the intake and preparation of the paperwork. Max?
And I'll take over the screen here again. Starting back within our homepage of my case, this is something where we typically manage any of the new potential clients under our what we call lead pipeline. And as you can see, this is ultimately set up to manage and track any of these potential new clients that come in, using Max as an example here. At the very beginning of the consultation and the engagement, something under the intakes forms, you would be able to, depending on what practice area it is, if you serve different practice areas, have these set up in a way for different cases, different practice areas. In this example, this would be a family case. And like Dave mentioned, actually send this out to the client to fill out on their end. So you now don't have to update and fill out that form for them or with them. And this is what it would look like on their end. It could be open on their computer, wherever they are, on their phone as well. And also set these up in a way where we don't necessarily want to ask them questions that may or may not be relevant to their specific case. So these can also be set up so depending on certain variables here, it's going to ask additional questions it otherwise might not have, just to make sure we're not necessarily bombarding clients with questions and making sure they can fill this out in a very efficient manner. If there are any specific documentation that is required here as well, that's something that could be requested here also, just to make sure you're really capturing anything that's relevant for that specific case, and also allow the client to keep a copy for themselves if they wanted to. And once completed, they would hit submit form here. All that information now flows into either what we call potential case details. And this could be set up in a way of really only the relevant pieces of information that you're looking for that specific case. We have a lot of them in here with it being a demo account, but this is entirely up to you how you want to label that depending on your nomenclature, as well as any additional details on that specific contact. Now, under the potential case details, this is where, since we've now already entered or have the intake form enter that piece of information into the actual platform, we can now set up really any type of document that you're currently generating and then reusing that intake information, oftentimes copying and pasting it over, and start setting up different document templates here. These can also be tagged for, again, different practice area types, maybe different psych or different areas within the life cycle of being with a client. And in this example, it could be something as simple as a welcome letter at the very beginning. where we'd be able to fill this out depending on who at the firm would be working the specific case, and actually label this document exactly how we would like. Tag that document again to make it easier to search if you wanted to have a description listed in here, and have the share with anyone within the firm as well that might also want access to it and would be reviewing it. Now from here, we could immediately open that or hit save and close, where it will appear in the documents tab directly under this new potential client. And by clicking on this little icon next to the document here, it would actually open that document directly in Word for us. We can see things like the address, name has already been updated. And again, we can really reference anything that's going to be important in this specific document, even make changes on the actual document here, which once saved would actually go back into the system and track a different version for that, just to make sure any changes that might be made after the initial review are reflected within the platform and everyone has the same level and version of that specific document. So again, here we're using automation to just cut down on time that is currently spent on more manual administrative tasks. And this would, for you as a firm, allow you to either take on more clients or really focus on more high level legal work, improving the overall client experience as well there. And I'll pass it back over to Dave from here.
That's right. Thank you, Max. Yeah, I mean, the technology is an integral component of this, as you can see, to make it so much more efficient, which then when you offer a financial accessible offering, as we do in the fair practice model, then that also makes it, very, very profitable for you to do it, where, as Max said, you can spend more time working on your cases, you can spend more time acquiring more clients, or you can also just have a much healthier profit margin. That's cool too, right? So that, in that, and then from an access problem, solving this challenge, one of the things we've recognized is it has to make sense for all of you as a practitioner. It has to make sense financially. And that's really how we're going to solve a challenge like this and open ourselves up into the market, is it has to make good business sense too. And that's where these tools and this technology makes this kind of a no-brainer in that sense, because it makes everything we're delivering here so much more efficient and so much more profitable for firms. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit more about some of the technological elements that make the fair practice model more efficient for attorneys. James, do you want to cover this part here?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Dave. So I'm just going to touch on this very briefly. Obviously, the reason why we have a three-part series is there is a ton of information to cover, a ton of capabilities that 8am My Case is able to address throughout the lifetime and life cycle of a case. So we want to make sure we give you very in-depth examples of that and functional knowledge of that. But for today, I just want to touch a little bit on the obvious, which is with, technology available, every step of our engagement with a client now has a technological component that can make our lives easier. So when you look at this list, this is taking it all the way from the inception and attempt to book a consultation with a client, and having software that allows you to send out booking links and notifies them that reminds them that the meeting's coming up, and cuts down on no-shows and increases your show up rate, things like that, all the way through taking their payment, getting their fee agreement e-signed, as we were shown a little bit today, the doc automation component of this. All of those things are neatly bundled and wrapped into a platform like 8am My Case, which allows you to address all of these different stages of the client's journey through your firm, enhance your efficiency, enhance your capability, and your profitability, to be quite frank. The last item on this list seems very obvious, right? AI tools. We have lawyers using AI tools, and those conversations are very much in the public sphere about, research and AI hallucinating cases. As Dave mentioned, we have clients using AI to try to help guide them through their journey. But the last application of this is something that doesn't get discussed very much. And that's clients using AI to shop for us as lawyers. What are they looking for? They're looking for accessibility and affordability. So clients no longer will just have to go search for attorney names and submit contact forms. They can now put into ChatGPT, hey, find me a family law attorney in the Denver area that will let me get started with my case for a reasonable fee. Right. And so the fair practice model also has utility and relevance there, because very soon clients are going to be given fair practice attorneys as that alternative option to the traditional model. So this will lend visibility on that side as well. And then to wit, what is it that the clients were dealing with in this current market? We showed the hard facts, we showed the data, we showed the income numbers, but what is their mindset? And a very interesting trip that Jen and I took was to the Equal Justice Conference this last year in San Francisco. They do great work trying to help the access to justice trend. We watched a presentation by Legal Link that was very compelling. They have a AI tool called Legal First Aid, which helps pro se people get access to services. And at the very end of that experience with the client, they ask them to do a survey. And as you can guess, the things that pop up on that survey and on that word cloud, a lot of us would anticipate, right? The legal system is discriminatory, biased, expensive, corrupt, inaccessible. We find it fascinating here. We had already developed the fair practice model and then saw this word cloud, and the most prominent feeling that clients have is that this system is unfair. So imagine them using an AI tool searching for an attorney with this background subconscious mindset that it's just patently unfair. And now they see that you're a fair practice attorney that's going to work with them to find accessible representation. And not only did this pop up once in their survey, they've run this survey more than once. The second time they ran it, unfair is still the most prominent feeling people have about what we do as a business. So if you're able to position yourself and juxtapose yourself against that, obviously you're going to have a huge competitive advantage versus the traditional model. And obviously here at Access Legal, that's what we do. We deliver clients that are educated on this model, that are shown there's a different way. And then we deliver those to our network attorneys that are looking to grow and tap into this middle income revenue stream and opportunity. So to tell you more about how we do that, I want to turn it over to Dave.
Yeah. So if some of what we're sharing here makes sense in terms of, thinking about how we can position our service, use technology to position our services to meet the needs of these, middle income families. And we think of all those people, who do we know that makes 50 to 150,000 a year? I mean, that's the market we're talking about. That's, my brother who's a teacher, his wife who's a nurse, my own family who's a therapist. I mean, these are the people that are not getting access to representation in this country. And the primary constraint is just their ability to come up with those large retainer fees up front. And so by utilizing these tools, you can position and start to open up the doors to such a much broader audience of clients that are absolutely in a position to retain your services, but just can't do it in a way that's upfront. And so as Jen talked about with the fair practice model and the financial accessible, leading with $1,500 to $2,500 as an initial starting point, or offering limited scope services that can be in that $500 to $1,500 range as a starting point. And so that's what it enables the client to say, yes, I can afford that. Yes, I can fit that in my budget. And then you can do payment plans of $300 every couple of weeks. Yeah, absolutely. Just set up on a debit card, credit card, and then that's all you really need to worry about in terms of covering the representation. So that's a model that's worked exceptionally well. And if that starts to make sense to you, then what we also do is we have a conversation. We bring clients. We also educate the public and clients about the fact that we have attorneys that provide these services. And we use a conversation verified intake system, which unfortunately today I don't have time to do the full demo of, but you can absolutely talk to our team and we'll show you the demonstration of our conversation intake system. But what it does is it has a conversation with each client that's coming in. Because a lot of folks don't know the area of law or the kind of legal matter they need. They say, I'm looking for a family lawyer because my father just passed away. We need a lawyer for the family. It's like, no, you don't. You need a probate attorney or a trust administration attorney, right? So, however, we have technology, obviously, that does know, based on how they describe their legal matter, what type of case they need help with. We can ask clarifying questions and say, I need help with my father's estate. We can say, hey, has your father passed away? Or are they just trying to do some planning? Figure out that practice area. right? And then based on the practice area, ask questions and say, if I got a DUI and I live in Orlando, that means you need an attorney in Orlando, right? Well, no, it could also mean that you might need the attorney in Jacksonville because you went to Jacksonville for the weekend and you got cited there, right? And so there's context-based questions we can ask to the client to figure out that jurisdiction, so they can tell us the proper location and get it connected to the right attorney. And then most importantly, we can also provide education to the client on what they can expect to pay one of the access attorneys or fair practice attorneys we work with all across the country. And so we tell them and we give them, an estimate of the typical starting fee that matches with exactly everything we've just shared with you today, right? The full representation on automated recurring payments or limited scope all falls in that kind of $500 to $2,500 range. There's a couple different variations, whether it's criminal or DUI, what the typical starting fee is, but we're trying to bring in clients that already are expecting to pay what it is that our attorneys offer. And that's why, some of your attorneys are having so much success retaining those clients, those potential clients as paying clients. We also share that, hey, payment plans are available in most cases. And then from there, once they submit the request, we live transfer them and schedule them directly on the calendar. So unfortunately, I don't have time for the demo today, but everything that I'm sharing with you, this has been, a lot of information. We have, a couple of different workshops coming up, but, as part of working with Access Legal, we also connect you with what we call a success attorney. So this is someone that is an attorney that works with our office to be able to work directly with you one-on-one to learn how to implement the different aspects of the fair practice model, how that translates to an effective consultation, the different services and how to communicate that to the clients, and how that specifically applies to each of the practice areas you may offer, like bankruptcy, criminal, DUI, family law, whatever it might be. And so we connect you with a success attorney to walk you through all of these things. These are the practice areas that we currently generate potential conversation verified clients for. So take a look at this list and see if there is a practice area that you currently provide services in. And then if you would like to start to receive clients for one of these practice areas, our terms are very fair in terms of how we operate. Every client that we send to our attorneys is exclusive, meaning it's one potential client, one attorney. We deliver them in real time. We don't have sign-up fees or deposits, no long-term contracts. We've also worked out a guarantee, which means you can start working with us, test us out for 20 clients, and we guarantee you're going to generate a profit from the potential clients we generate with you, so long as the fair practice model is something that you're open to implement into your practice. And so that makes it really easy for us to have a starting point to have conversations about the fair practice model and also start to bring you clients that can help you, acquire more business and take your practice to the next level. So with that, we have a couple of QR codes here that you can scan to schedule a call with either AAM MyCase team to, if you don't already have the tools that we've just described available at your fingertips to, offer the automated recurring billing payments, streamline document automation and intake, and so much more that the MyCase platform offers. This is just a scratch of the scratch of what's possible with this technology platform. Please go ahead and scan that code there. If you'd like to schedule a call with us to learn more about how we can start delivering you conversation verified clients that are ready to looking to hire access attorneys that provide this exact same fair practice model, then please scan that code there. One more thing, I'll give you one more second to scan the code, but then one more thing as well. This, again, as I said, is just the first workshop in the series. We are doing episode 2 next week. That's Friday the 19th, also at 10 a.m. Pacific time. That's where we're going to really drive into the fair practice consultation, which is how does this show up on a consultation? How do you deliver these services to the client to actually get them hiring your services right away? And then in a couple of weeks after that will be March 5th. We're going to do fair practice in real life, which is how to apply this in each of the different practice areas with real life clients and situations. We have a QR code for each of those 2 workshops as well, which you can scan to get registered for those aspects of the workshop if you haven't done so already as well. So with that, I'd like to thank the AAM MyCase team, as well as our amazing, illustrious co-presenters, James Bogate and Ms. Jen Johnson, for being here today. And also thank all of you for taking seriously learning how to implement legal technology so that you can position your firm to truly thrive in this modern era. As we said, we truly believe that attorneys are the future of the practice of law and can really provide services to all these millions of families that need legal services. but technology is an integral component to making that possible. And so we appreciate you taking the time to really learn how to do that today. And we welcome the opportunity to speak with each of you personally to work closely with you to help you do so over the coming weeks and months. With that, we can open it up for questions if there's time, or we can wrap here. That's depending on the moderator.
I did want to answer the question in the Q&A box if there's time. Brittany and Amanda.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So the question was from an anonymous attendee that said, this framework sounds like it is for those who represent individuals. I handle contracts and trademarks for nonprofit organizations and small businesses. I was interested in setting up a subscription type arrangement for fractional general counsel services. And this is a fantastic question. And the answer is, as Max had detailed, the functionality of what the MyCase payment merchant service will do here fits very neatly into your business model and what you're trying to do. Again, what is the traditional approach? The traditional approach is usually to go to businesses and presume they have the money to hire an attorney and say, oh yeah, and almost predatory practices there. I was on a school board for a long time. It's just like, oh, they're publicly funded, they have tons of money, $10, $15, $20,000. Think about the competitive advantage for yourself coming in using this exact technology and just saying, hey, company X, if you work with me, you don't have to have this huge outlay of cash at the beginning. All you need to do is set yourself up on this automated, subscription service, automated subscription cadence, and every 2 weeks or every month or whatever. It's a business, so the cash flow isn't as restricted as it usually is with an individual to their payday, right? So you could structure that with whenever their quarterly report comes out, or whenever they have distributions of cash that go into the company if it's a nonprofit. You would have that honest conversation about money, like Jen said, find out which way would work best for the company, and then you would just set it and forget it. Like Jen said, you would take a card or some type of automated payment method, come up with the date and the cadence that works best for the company, and then just, like you said, that's your selling point, is you don't, you just pay for this over time. Yeah, you're going to pay the same. I'm not a discount lawyer. You're going to pay the same. I get the market rate, but you can pay for it in a way that allows the company to preserve resources and capital for other investments that'll help generate more revenue. Right. I don't know if Dave or Jen, you want to add to that, but
well, a lot of I think what you're going to be doing for the school or company or entity, involves a lot of documents and preparation. So to the degree that you can also make use of the document automation and empower the school to give you that information or to fill out some of these things as well, will make that a lot more efficient, more streamlined. And so from your standpoint, especially if you're doing some things under a flat fee or phase by phase or in chapters, that's going to make the work that you're doing way more efficient and profitable for the firm.
Dave, there's actually one more question that came in that I want to make sure we get answered. Sarah asks, is there a fair certification so that clients would know that we operate on these principles?
Dave?
Jen, you want to do that one?
I'm happy to take that one. So yes, actually, we are in the process of developing the Fair Practice certification. So stay tuned. We will be giving you more information about that here very shortly, but we're excited about that opportunity because it really can be a differentiating certification for you as an attorney and can certainly give you a competitive edge, we believe, and also just informs the clients that you are doing things in a different way. So we are looking forward to getting that certification completed, and we will let you know when it's ready.
Great. I think that's all the questions we had.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for participating. Thanks again to the 8 a.m. MyCase team. Once again, for those that might still be with us, this is the QR codes for next week's Fair Practice workshop series, and the one that will be 2 weeks from there on March 5th. So feel free to get registered, and we will see you on the next workshop. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.